In 1996, a pharmaceutical company released a new painkiller. They told doctors it was safe. They told doctors it was almost impossible to get addicted to. That claim wasn't just wrong. Internal documents later showed the company knew it was wrong. By the time the truth came out, that one drug had helped trigger an epidemic that has killed more than 500,000 Americans. This is the story of Purdue Pharma and the family behind it, the Sacklers. The Sackler family wasn't new to medicine. Arthur Sackler, the eldest of 3 brothers, made his fortune in the mid-20th century, not by inventing drugs, but by reinventing how they were sold. He pioneered aggressive pharmaceutical marketing, including direct advertising to doctors, a practice that reshaped the entire industry. His brothers, Mortimer and Raymond, bought a small drug company in 1952. That company was Purdue Frederick, which would eventually become Purdue Pharma. For decades, the company sold modest, unremarkable products. That changed in 1996 when Purdue launched OxyContin, a powerful opioid painkiller, designed with a time-release coating meant to control the dose over 12 hours. Purdue marketed it aggressively to doctors as safer than older opioids, suitable even for chronic, everyday pain, not just cancer patients or end-of-life care. Sales reps were sent out with a message backed by the company's own research. The risk of addiction was less than 1%. Prescriptions exploded. By the early 2000s, OxyContin was generating over $1 billion a year for Purdue. The Sackler family's wealth soared into the billions. Here's the part Purdue didn't advertise. OxyContin's time-release coating could be crushed, defeating the slow-release mechanism entirely, and releasing the full 12-hour dose all at once. Snorted or injected, it produced an effect similar to heroin. Internal. Purdue documents later revealed in lawsuits showed the company was aware of abuse and diversion of OxyContin as early as 1997, just a year after launch. Sales representatives were reporting it. Law enforcement was reporting it. Doctors were reporting it. The company's response wasn't to pull back. It was to keep pushing. Purdue continued targeting high-prescribing doctors, some of whom ran what became known as pill mills, clinics that prescribed opioids with little medical oversight, sometimes for cash. Purdue's own sales data reportedly flagged unusually high-volume prescribers, and the company kept sending reps to visit them anyway. Meanwhile, the human costs kept climbing. Entire communities, especially in rural Appalachia, saw addiction and overdose rates spike far above the national average. As OxyContin became harder to get, or more expensive on the street, many users transitioned to heroin, a well-documented pipeline that public health researchers would later trace directly back to prescription opioid overavailability. In 2007, Purdue Pharma and 3 of its executives pleaded guilty to federal charges of misleading the public about OxyContin's addiction risk. The company paid $600 million in fines, at the time, one of the largest settlements in pharmaceutical history. And yet, the marketing barely slowed down. Purdue continued aggressive sales practices for another decade. Members of the Sackler family sat on Purdue's board and, according to later litigation, were directly involved in decisions about how hard to push sales, even as the opioid crisis was declared a public health emergency. Between 2008 and 2018 alone, court documents alleged the Sackler family withdrew roughly $10 billion from the company. Money plaintiffs' attorneys argued was moved out in anticipation of future lawsuits, positioning the family's personal wealth beyond the reach of the very people harmed by their product. By the mid-2010s, thousands of lawsuits, from individuals, families, and state governments were piling up against Purdue and the Sacklers. In 2019, facing an avalanche of litigation, Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy. As part of a proposed settlement, the Sackler family offered billions of dollars while fighting hard to secure something else just as valuable to them: permanent legal immunity from any future opioid-related lawsuits, without ever admitting personal wrongdoing. That immunity shield was fiercely contested for years. In 2024, the U.S. Supreme Court ultimately rejected the bankruptcy plan's non-debtor liability release, ruling that the Sacklers could not receive blanket protection from civil claims simply by having Purdue file for bankruptcy. It sent the case back for renegotiation. Even after a revised, multi-billion-dollar settlement was reached, no member of the Sackler family has ever faced criminal charges in the United States over OxyContin. The name Purdue Pharma barely exists in public anymore, but the epidemic it helped ignite is still being counted, one overdose statistic at a time. That's the story of Purdue Pharma and the Sackler family, a billion-dollar fortune, built in part on a promise the company's own research said wasn't true. If you want the next story in this series, Luckin Coffee's fabricated revenue, or a deeper dive into any episodes so far, let me know in the comments. If you want the next story, subscribe. Next time on the Ledger Files, Luckin Coffee's $300 million lie.